eye contact there, camera.
I think it's going to be with me. Yeah.
Sure, you got it. I'm Bill Pieroni, President and CEO of ACORD, the global standard-setting body for the insurance industry. Well, I started in insurance well over 2 decades ago and had a number of roles in the industry as a consultant, running large insurers and serving in senior operating roles across a few brokers. So one could say my entire career path led me to this role. I've always been involved with ACORD and by way of ACORD with the Ruschlikon initiative at carriers and brokers alike. So my ultimate role as CEO of ACORD really came about as I matured throughout the industry and was fortunate enough to have the role offered to me a little over 24 months ago. Well, Ruschlikon is an incredibly important part of ACORD. Clearly, the global reinsurance and large commercial standards represent the beating heart of the organization. And when I was Chief Information Officer at Aon, Chief Operating Officer at Marsh, responsible for operations at State Farm, all of those roles, I was involved in the Ruschlikon initiative, given the importance of reinsurance and large commercial transactions at those organizations. I think the main challenges for Ruschlikon over the last decade has really been increased adoption. There's a certain cost, not only resources, but time and effort associated with implementing and deploying Ruschlikon standards. And in the end, high-skill, high-will colleagues are some of the scarcest resources, and there's a great number of demands within brokerage, primary carriers, and reinsurers vying for those resources. So I would say the biggest challenge has really been a critical mass of people focused on implementing and deploying and using the standards. Yeah, there's a virtuous cycle. So ACORD has about 8,000 members globally, comprising over 1/3 of all the world's premiums. So clearly ACORD has a large global reach, but when you look to the Ruschlikon stakeholders, they're also large and global. And clearly there are regional or even national players who use Ruschlikon, but in the end, there are huge network effects associated with the industry using it. So we work in synergy, and it's very helpful to have large global insureds, reinsurers, primary carriers, and brokers leveraging the Ruschlikon standard. And having that kind of reach, I think, is synergistic and does create a virtuous cycle of increasing the use, deployment, and leverage of the standard for value creation across the stakeholder community. I think a continued effort on deployment. In the end, these standards are of no use unless they're used. So continuing the penetration within the Ruschlikon members, but also the recruitment of new members to use the standard is an area of historical focus and continued focus moving forward. That next generation of colleagues that are coming into the industry, ensuring that they come and stay, and then getting them to understand the value of standards and how it creates operational efficiency, effectiveness, and strategic positioning is going to be critical. I think as relates to the Ruschlikon standard and the use of technology, increasing levels of digitization are a future inevitability. A recent study that ACORD performed shows material outperformance for those insurance stakeholders who've digitized their value chain. We had some very specific metrics we looked at, but they grew faster, produced greater levels of profit, and had higher levels of shareholder returns. I think there's a Darwinian evolution that's occurring, and if you're not digitized and truly leveraging technology for competitive advantage, you unfortunately will be deselected from the market. Well, being Italian by birth, I cook. I wouldn't say that it's a hobby necessarily. I wouldn't want to become a cook professionally, but I do like my food, and I would say it probably would be cooking. And then as a close corollary, exercising in order to enable me to eat. If I could control the eating, I probably wouldn't exercise as much, but I would say they tend to go hand in hand for me. I do like making my own bread. But if you continue it on, it's my own pizza. So if you call bread with mozzarella and tomato and homemade sausage on it, being a bread, it tends to be pizza. And it truly is good. All right.
Brilliant.
Very good.
Nice name.
Thank you. All right, that's easy. Yep.